Good day, Junior Tuckies. I am Mrs. Burdenkamp, and in this lesson, I will be covering tone, mood, and diction. Let's just quickly recap denotation and connotation, because this is very, very important when you need to decide the tone or mood of a poem. So denotation is the literal meaning from the dictionary. So when you say she was cold, she literally was feeling cold. Whereas connotation is the emotions and the feelings we have behind those words. So, for example, she was cold. It could mean that she's not an approachable person or that she's not loving or a caring person. Now we get to the age-old question, what is tone? Tone, grade 11s, is the attitude of the speaker or the writer, the way in which their writing comes across to you as the reader. So what do you need to look out for when you're looking for tone? You need to look at the connotation of words. Are they negative? Are they positive? What associations do they bring to mind? Then you need to look at diction, which is word choice. I will get into that a little bit later, but let's have a look over here on what you need to look for. Are there lots of thous and thines? Does the writer use slang? Do they use long technical sentences or short and childish ones? Then, of course, you need to look at figurative language. Are there lots of different options of figurative language? Does the language sound poetic in a way? And then this is going to affect the mood. So how does the language make you feel as the reader? And then, of course, this reveals a lot about the tone of the poem. Here are a couple of words to describe different tones. So for a speech that's, overwhelming, maybe a little bit too long, or even motivational, you could say that it's lofty, soaring, or elevated. Then, those really soppy love poems, you could say that it's grandiose, that it's flowery, that it's melodramatic. When someone is writing comments on the internet or being boastful and proud in their speech, you could say that they sound smug, they sound pompous, or they sound preachy. If you're listening to a eulogy at a funeral, it could definitely be a somber, dark, or serious or gloomy tone. Then you can use these different words to describe tone in general, with humorous, witty, or goofy, light-hearted, cheerful, and optimistic. If tone is the writer's attitude, what is mood? Mood is the effect that the piece of writing has on the reader. So the mood is how it makes you feel. These are things that you can look out for when you're trying to discover what the mood is of a poem or a novel. Look at the setting. Is it ominous? Is it eerie? Is it exciting? Look at the imagery that's being used. Are there stunning, beautiful, vivid images, or are they images that are a little bit dark and gloomy? Look at diction once again. Are there a lot of slang words being used? Is there elevated language being used? Then, what's the tone? What's the writer's attitude? What are they trying to say to you? And then, of course, the mood will depend on the genre and the plot. Here are a couple of words to describe mood. It could be cheerful, melancholic, idyllic, mysterious, ominous, fearful, or even lonely. Write these words down and use them in the future. What's the difference between tone and mood? Mood is how you feel as the reader. Tone is the writer's attitude. And of course, they are often closely related. But do not get confused between the two, especially when you're explaining questions that ask for the different tone or mood. When you're talking about tone, you need to think about the writer's attitude. When you're talking about mood, you need to think to yourself, how did it make me feel? Let's have a look at an example of how tone and mood is shown from an extract from Maya Angelou's poem, Woman Work. I got the children to tend, the clothes to mend, the floor to mop, the food to shop, then the chicken to fry, the baby to dry. I got company to feed, the garden to weed. I got shirts to press, the tots to dress, the can to be cut. I gotta clean up this hut, then see about the sick, and then the cotton to pick. So let's start off with the connotation of words over here. So if we look at the word, I've got clothes to tend. Or rather, I've got the children to tend. When you're tending to something, it's when you're making sure that it's just alive. She doesn't say over here, I've got the children to love. So we can almost see this to tend to something is almost like a job. So being a mom, being a woman, it's her job to look after the children. The same with the clothes to mend. She's mending the clothes with her bare hands. She's not necessarily fixing the clothes. So to mend is once again her job. Then if we move down this extract and we move all the way to the last line, and the cotton to pick. This connotation over here that we have of cotton picking, we know that the denotation is physically to go pick cotton, but if you hear anything about cotton picking in poetry, more likely than not, it's referring to slavery. So we know by just looking at the connotation over here of the words that this is about woman's work. This is about a woman who is forced to do these jobs, and then not only is she forced to do the jobs of a woman, she's also a slave having to pick cotton. So what is the tone of this particular piece? What kind of emotions does Maya Angelou want us as the reader to understand from her point of view? I would definitely say that there's a sense of anger in this work because she has to do all of these chores, and not only is she not done doing these chores, she still needs to go and work for no salary, being a slave. And the way in which Maya Angelou is bringing this forth to us is how she's listing these jobs that she has to do. It's one after the other, one after the other, one after the other. And then in the last line of this extract, we realize that her work hasn't actually even begun. Then the mood. How does it make us feel as the reader? I would also go along the lines of a little bit of hopelessness. That unfortunately this woman, the speaker in the poem, has not a lot of hope left. She's got all of these tasks to do, and then she has to move on to her slave-driven job. It's not a job, but a slave-driven world where she has to do whatever her owner tells her to do. So there's a real sense of hopelessness. How is she going to get out of this? But remember, this just is one extract from the poem. If you are interested, go and look up this wonderful work by Maya Angelou. What is diction? Diction is the way in which a writer uses words. So if you can't remember what diction means, just look at the word. It looks very close to dictionary, where we look up the meaning of words. So diction is the way that you use words. It also creates the tone and the atmosphere for a piece of writing and determines whether the register is formal or informal. Let's have a look at an example of diction from F. Scott Fitzgerald's The Great Gatsby. So I'm just going to read the extract to you. This is a valley of ashes, a fantastic farm where ashes grow like wheat into ridges and hills, and grotesque gardens where ashes take the forms of houses and chimneys and rising smoke, and finally, with a transcendent effort of men who move dimly and already crumbling through the powdery air. Occasionally a line of grey cars crawl along an invisible track, gives out a ghastly creak, and comes to rest. And immediately the ash-grey men swarm up with laden spades and stir up an impenetrable cloud, which screams their obscure operations from your sight. Now, just reading this, it may seem confusing. What's he even talking about? Now, F. Scott Fitzgerald loved to use these descriptive words to be able to create this picture, the atmosphere in our mind. So he's using words like powdery, crumbling, laden, and ash-grey, and often refers to the textures and the material of this industrial landscape that he's trying to describe to us. So he's trying to compare this description of the Valley of Ashes, if you have read The Great Gatsby, to the Buchanan's mansion that is only minutes away. So it's almost the way that Nick Carraway, our narrator in The Great Gatsby, sees the Valley of Ashes versus the Buchanan's mansion. That's it for today, grade 11s. I hope that you understand tone, mood, and diction just a little bit better. Goodbye and good luck.